Right, so welcome guys. We've got another episode here of the Velocity Radio podcast here today with myself, Ben, and I've got Matt with us from Velocity. So you've got a Velocity duo on this one, regardless of an external guest. How are you doing, Matt?
Yeah, not bad, mate. Not bad, are you?
Yeah, good, thank you, pal. You've took the reins on a lot of us podcasts lately, haven't you? And nailed a couple of good ones, haven't you?
Yeah, I've had some good guests on. We had Jamie Alderson on last week, and a couple more guests, which, depending on when this is released, obviously see those episodes coming up over the next coming weeks.
Yeah, we've got some real good ones for guys to be listening out for and watching. But yeah, some absolute top ones. Jamie Alderton, we've tried to get him on for a long time, haven't we? And it's been actually good to kind of get him on and kind of, because we know we both followed him, haven't we? Within the industry for a while.
He's someone who's hugely relevant as well, especially with what's going on in the world at the minute, and talking about, he's obviously very heavily focused on mindset and habit change and stuff. So I think that's really important at the minute.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, as you've kind of already touched on, Matt, and the guys that are listening, that they'll kind of know that we're kind of going through the coronavirus pandemic at the moment, and relatively for people working in the fitness, health, and well-being sector, it has affected us quite a lot. And I'm not going to lie, it's kind of it's still, we're not kind of like susceptible to it not affecting Velocity as well. It is still affecting us. In a sense of the way now we deliver our courses and so on. So well, that's what we're going to kind of look to cover on this episode of the podcast, just kind of how we're adapting things we're putting out there for students and just people relatively in the fitness and health and wellbeing sector, that can help them during this time, and also just kind of touching on points of how we can look to use this negative and build it into a positive, and maybe other little gems and nuggets that you can pick out of this one regarding like HMRC schemes that can help you out if you are self-employed and unfortunately being affected quite heavily by this pandemic. So we'll look to get into it then straight away, Matt. So I know aside from all the work that we do at Velocity and everything, you still have your personal training clients and your face-to-face clients. So just to kind of put that into perspective for guys that are listening that may not be working in the health and fitness sector, how has it affected you personally, Matt, with that?
So obviously gyms have totally shut down. It was kind of one of them things where we knew it was going to happen, we just didn't know when. I'm in quite the fortunate position where around 6 months ago, I decided to take my business online, or a certain big amount of it online, and offer online coaching. So what I've done is, since the gym's shutting down, I've just converted a large amount of my clients to online clients. So for those that haven't, I'm still keeping in touch with them. They're obviously doing their own thing, keeping in check-ins, that kind of thing. But as a business, not just myself, so anyone who works at a gym, whether you're a fitness instructor, a personal trainer, physiotherapists, massage therapists, all these kind of people in the industry have massively suffered. Now, I always feel quite fortunate because I can still do a certain amount online. If you're someone who's only running a face-to-face business, or if you are massage therapist, obviously you can't really do that at a distance. So yeah, I feel quite lucky because of the position that I'm in with my business, whereas I know that other people, other trainers who maybe don't have an online platform because they've not developed it yet or whatever, but it's now, there's obviously no time like the present to do that if that's something that they want to do. So
yeah, definitely, and I know that's kind of something that we have tried to bang on about, especially within our course delivery, kind of looking at getting people to not just see it as a face-to-face, like look to build a little bit online if you can, just because you never know when times, I'm not saying this is going to happen regularly, pandemics like this, but you know, kind of like you're good to have different revenues, different kind of streams of income coming in from different areas. And if your eggs are all kind of in one basket, almost, it would take something like this that can maybe point you down the road that changes do need to be made. and look to adapt. And I think that's something that we are probably going to see coming out of this, that people are going to be more modernized in a sense of building up the systems and the resources, especially if they're more a face-to-face working role, such as like a personal trainer or a sports massage therapist.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
So kind of like how has it affected us at Velocity? So we obviously deliver our courses now. The majority, well, I say a good proportion of our courses are actually online delivery based. So we have our e-learning platform, and we look to link up with our students online anyway. Where we have taken quite a bit of a hit is our face-to-face course delivery. So obviously we can't be having classroom-based delivery with 10 to 11 students in a classroom, because obviously we're all social distancing at the moment. So we have had to currently just kind of postpone those at the moment, and kind of think on our feet and merge it into a more an online course delivery model for the classroom-based people. We have really tried to keep open forms of communication with our students as well during this time, which we would really recommend anybody that is a self-employed personal trainer or sports massage therapist to do with your own clients. You need to keep engaged with them. You need to keep an open, honest form and line of communication with them, just so then they're updated and they're fully aware that you're still there, you still care for them, and going that extra mile. So that is one way in how we have been affected as a business. So we've also flipped that on its end as well, and thought, well, I know during this time we can't be hosting any kind of assessment dates, attendance dates for students to be coming in and being taught and doing their assessments. So how can we look to use this time a lot more productively? And we've had a look at many different things, such as like podcasts being one that we're currently doing at the moment, putting more efforts into it, but also what can we give back to the community? What can we give back to our students and people that are out there to try and really help them and through this time period? So we have had a look at and we have released kind of like our free template recipe book that students can literally brand up as their own. So all the recipes are in there. They can just brand it up by themselves, put their own logos on it, amend it if they want, and then do what they want with it. So if you think these PDFs, a branded recipe book, the world's kind of endless with what you want to do with that as a personal trainer or a sports massage therapist for the clients. I mean, have you ever done anything with kind of like downloadable PDFs before, Matt, with clients or anything?
Not so much a learning tool. Something, again, now that I've got, I'm not in the gym anymore, so my evenings are now free, which they haven't been for years. So I've been spending that time to create content. One of the things I've been creating is like a basic nutritional guide for clients. So just something developing, like you say, through a PDF, easily downloadable, easy to read, hopefully easy to kind of digest that information, and just a little bit of education, elaborating on what my face-to-face clients already know, the reasons why I suggest doing certain things, and just expanding on their own knowledge for future as well. So the recipe book that we offer, really, really good idea. A lot of people struggle with recipes and ideas. So having, as a personal trainer, having your own that's branded, looks professional, and the recipe is actually nice, then it's going to be a really, really good positive thing for their businesses.
Yeah, exactly. And if you think for a trainer or a therapist, if they're giving that to their clients, they're giving and offering more value to their clients. And it's totally down to that individual if they want to either charge for this PDF. So they could charge a little supplement if they wanted to and actually make an income from it. It doesn't have to be hundreds of pounds, you know, it can literally just be like £5. Or they could use it as a lead generation tool at the same time. So if they are actively wanting to gain more clients and gain more people coming through the door and using their services, they could offer it as a free download as long as they register their interest in order to gain it. And that can be very easily set up through creating like a landing page and a form submission form that that would then automatically download this PDF. And it doesn't just have to stop at a recipe book. That's just one idea. Further down the line, the individual could look at a stretching manual, a mobility manual. It could be, the options are endless for that. But that all comes down to utilizing this time more that we've got. So you may not actively be doing your day-to-day job the usual way now you do it. Your hours have all of a sudden changed. You're told that you're supposed to stay housebound. So look to utilize this time better. So why not schedule your days a lot better? Why not have a look at different ways, create a SWOT analysis of your own business, look at to utilize this time to reflect and look back on your practices and how you can make it better for when the end comes to this pandemic, when we're back either in the gyms or in the studios and working with clients again. So yeah, I mean, that's one massive thing that I would say. I mean, have you got any tips or anything that you can give to people during this time, Matt, and how they can use it more effectively?
Yeah, I think it's one of them where obviously you've mentioned content. That's obviously huge in terms of delivering different content, whatever platform or medium that wants to be. Another great way to use this time is to further educate yourself. Now, that's not me trying to say, oh, you should enroll into one of Velocity's courses. We're not trying to do a hard sell or anything like that. But just educate yourself on areas where you feel as though you want to be educated on, where you're, you mentioned a SWOT analysis. What are your weaknesses? If one of your weaknesses is something that you could, you could gain information from and be better at, then go do that. If you're thinking, you want to specialize in an area that you've been wanting to for ages, but you maybe not have the time, go do that. Time is, I said on a podcast yesterday with somebody that time is probably the biggest challenge that personal trainers face. And now that a lot of personal trainers have got a lot more time, use it. Don't just waste it and wait for things to get back to normal. I don't want to name drop too much, but when I was on the podcast with Jamie Alderson last week, he made a good point where people are treating this as a temporary thing. So what a lot of people's mindsets will be is, oh, I'll just get back to it when things go back to normal, or I'll start back to the gym, or getting back into these healthier routines. And he said, well, imagine that this is what we're in now is forever, and make the changes that you need to make to adapt to that situation. And it's right, you need to be aware of the situation you're in and make most of the time that you've got as well.
No, that's great. It's almost like imagine now is your new permanent, and what are you going to do? What are you going to do about it?
Exactly.
You woke up Monday morning and we're housebound for forever. How are you going to make an income now? So that, it's a very good mentality to have. And just little tips that I've kind of thought about over the last couple of days to try and be more productive, because it is a little bit of a drag if your weekends are not feeling any different to your weekdays, and you're no longer getting little things like you miss that morning commute. I know that sounds ridiculous because everybody hates it when they come to do it, like a morning commute, but it's just that part of the day that kind of signifies, right, I am going to work. Do you know what I mean? And then all of a sudden now you haven't been given that. And at the end of the day as well, right, I am now no longer at work. I am going home to have tea and relax. You've no longer got that. You've got to be able to distinguish the differences with it. So I really think scheduling and factoring things in the day prior to you actually doing them is going to be paramount. So look to almost micromanage your time during the day and look to be disciplined towards it. So whether you use like a calendar or whether you use just like it would be a calendar, paper-based calendar, online calendar. I know we use our Outlook calendars at work, and micromanage your time, right? I'm going to designate X amount of time this week to complete this task that's on my to-do list, and look to be disciplined. Because I genuinely think, and I went through a bit of a rough patch a couple of weeks ago where if you just rely solely on motivation at the minute to do things, you're not going to do it. Because we're probably at one of the most demotivated times during British life. You need to be disciplined with yourself, and it's that discipline that's then going to enable you to do the tasks and jobs that you need. So don't just rely on motivation, because that's not going to get shit done at a minute.
I 100% agree. So when we obviously had the meeting in the office, however many weeks ago, 4 or 5 weeks ago now, where it was like, right, we're gonna work remotely. A lot of people think working remotely, oh, it's easy. You just sit at home, put your feet up, blah 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 blah. And it's probably that first week was probably the most difficult work week I've ever had, and that's simply because it's such a big adjustment. You know, when you're in work, you're in work mode. You're sat in the office. You're with the people you work with. You're obviously we're in our office. When you're at home, you know, sat on the sofa at your dining room table, you've got all these distractions. Home, it's relaxing. So it's a very difficult environment to be motivated in, like you just said, and be productive. So that first week for me was huge adjustment period, as it will be for a lot of people who, you know, who are working remotely. It's really hard to almost switch off. So I think, again, you mentioned that we use calendars and Outlook. Scheduling what you're going to do at every point of the day and sticking to that routine almost is a really, really great way to be productive and make sure that you're getting on with the tasks that are important.
Exactly, yeah. It needs to be done, because otherwise, if you sit at your laptop first thing in the morning, you've set your alarm, you've got up and you think, right, I'm going to do work in the morning, but you haven't effectively wrote down a list and you haven't designated time to complete those specific tasks, and you don't have an action plan. It's like trying to say, right, I'm going to create a business and not have a business plan without any set goals. Well, how are you going to achieve your goals by the end of the day if you don't actually know what you're doing? So whether it be something like creating online systems, creating online content, creating new payment plans and schemes and packages for your clients, look to factor in time and designate time to complete that and be disciplined with it. Like I touched on earlier that I had a bit of a rough patch a couple of weeks ago where I would, like, I know you've been open and honest there, Matt, that first week was very difficult, and it was because you're trying to get used to like just different environments, different ways of working. You've got 101 things on your mind, never mind kind of like, I'm not going to see my clients, but right, okay, income, where's that coming from, what are we doing here, and so on, and how we're going to amend and adapt different schedules. And I actually got to the point where I wasn't missing until I actually ended up falling ill, but I missed out on the commute home from work. So it's kind of like I'd be sat in the exact same spot, not moved, not got up, probably gone to the toilet a couple of times from in the morning till frigging 7-8 o'clock at night, and just not actually being able to kind of just like, right, that's it. I'm going to be disciplined to kind of say that's it for the day now. Because if you were normally working, you would do that. But it's been very difficult, especially within that first week, to try and get all of your personal systems in place for that.
Just adjustment period, isn't it? Getting used to that new environment.
Exactly. So yeah, so that's what I'd preach. Micromanage your time. Look to have a set kind of to-do list and look to manage that time effectively to create everything that's on your to-do list. Business plans, self-reflection, massive time for that for trainers, I believe. It needs to be done, and therapists. How can you be better, basically?
Yeah, I think you touched on there, like obviously as a business, how we helping our learners and you know, qualified PTs, and something that we've been offering along with our podcasts and our recipe book, etc., is webinars. So there's we've created a webinar that I delivered last week, which we got some really good feedback from. So from that, we're obviously going to be doing another one next week. So this is something that we're going to look to do regularly, just for further support, topics that are relevant to our learners, and it's going to help people progress their businesses.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something the trainers and therapists can think about as well. I know we're talking about it from a perspective from our students, but their clients are their customers. So why not start utilizing the time and giving more value to them? You could maybe do a mobility webinar for your clients. You could maybe do a strength training seminar online for your clients that are really into that. So why not use this time to give something back to your clients that have been your paying customers for so long? And they are really good things, because not only is it giving you a platform to communicate with your clients, you're creating content for yourself that you can record to upload at a later date. You're kind of building relationships with them, you're giving more value to those clients, and it's also giving you another method and means to upsell some of your other external services that you can do with your clients as well. It's not just, don't think of it as, oh, this is a bit like 45 minutes that I'm doing for free and I'm not going to get anything out of it. Be optimistic with it. Don't be pessimistic with that time. Think of the positives that you can gain out of it. So yeah, and that is something that we've picked up ourselves. We've sold, like basically sold out our spaces on our second webinar already within 24 hours. We've had to put more out there. So we are going to look to schedule these webinars more often and have a schedule throughout the calendar year for people just to jump on. And you can be a student. You don't necessarily have to be a student at the same time as well. You can just have an interest in fitness, health and well-being, and you can jump onto a webinar free of charge. Great. So what we're going to have a look at now, Matt. So I know we've talked about what we offer as students, and we're giving out to people for free, trying to help the industry. And we've talked about how they can utilize this downtime to help try and grow their businesses as well. And we've kind of given a couple of tips in regards to that. What about taking the positives out of this situation then? As a business owner, how can you take positives out of this type of situation?
I think as a trainer, a personal trainer or massage therapist specifically, I think obviously the biggest obstacle is the sudden impact of it. So it's not been like a slow process, it's just all of a sudden it stopped. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people were probably uncertain in the beginning in terms of financially, how the business is going to continue and whatever else is going to happen. But I think positives you can draw from the amount of time that you've got maybe with loved ones, the time that you can focus on you as an individual, so maybe personal growth. What you might set business plans out post pandemic, if you like, and look at things that you want to implement that you maybe may have not thought of before. You may do a business plan or a new business plan if you've got an old one, and account for the changes that are going to be bedded within the economy when we come out of the pandemic. All these things can be viewed as a positive, purely down to the fact that it's how you're going to progress you and your business as a whole.
Yeah, exactly. And I can say that it becomes really easy to get into the normal monotonous working lifestyle. So you can, especially as a self-employed person, you can be work, and you actually never actually take that time to sit back and reflect and look upon everything that you're doing. You're only seeing your next hour time slot that you've got booked in. You're only seeing your next client that you're seeing within your head when you wake up in the morning. So rather than focusing on that all of a sudden, now you've now got time to actually sit back and think, well, yes, I will work in 45, 50 hours that week, but yet I don't feel like I'm getting as much value out of that time that I'm actually giving. So then all of a sudden this can now be reflective time. When you have spent time with loved ones a little bit more, you have kind of come to an understanding that actually, do I want to be working 45, 50 hours a week, non-stop grafting, when I could be working less but charging more? So look to utilize this time to actually look at your self-value. Do you want to maybe put a limit on how many clients that you're going to see? Do you maybe want to increase your prices a little bit when you come out of the back of this? Just because there's actually no better time to do that than now when you're not really seeing anybody. So it could be a really good time for self-reflection, and just really taking a step back and understanding, right, what do I offer? How is my working life at the moment? How does that impact my social life out at the end of it? Am I gaining as much kind of enjoyment out of this as what I would want to? And if the answer is no, now is a great time to just literally knuckle down and make some changes to it. So yeah, I would definitely recommend that the positives out of the situation. Yes, there may be a lack of daily income that's coming in, but think of it in terms of a 5-year plan coming out the back of this. If you use this time wisely and correctly, you could actually be working less hours and gaining more money if you want to reflect on this correctly and use this time to either upskill, self-educate, or maybe even just write yourself a little bit of a better business model if needed.
Yeah, 100% agree.
Yeah, because we know when you're doing your normal working week, it becomes you get bogged down in your single jobs that you're doing within your working life. So now's the time when you can think more in a growth mindset rather than a fixed close one whilst you're working. So I kind of already touched on it there a little bit. Money, income, especially for self-employed people. It can become quite a bit of a raw subject at the moment because they've closed gyms. It's something unprecedented, something that was never happened before, and something that we never actually thought would happen.
Yeah.
So you close the gyms, you've effectively closed off an income revenue for studio owners, gym owners, personal trainers, therapists that are working within those environments. And what is out there, what can actually be able to help them? Well, initially, there wasn't anything, was there? If you remember it all coming out, because if you look at the economy, the self-employed category is a hell of a lot smaller than the employed category. So when all of this went that kind of down into lockdown, the first and foremost, they had to protect the percentages. They had to protect the majority of the working force, and that's when the 80% furlough came out, for the fully employed staff and so on. Now, there has been, because I'm following it and everything, and I get updates from the accountants and HMRC on it, there are now set specific parameters within furlough for set specific sectors. So obviously, if you're listening to this and you're working within a different sector other than health and fitness, it may be completely different as to what, say, for example, education is, or what law is, or anything like that. But for self-employed people who are kind of left in loop a little bit, and it seemed really kind of soul destroying. Especially kind of looking online in our groups and people worrying and thinking, oh gosh, what am I to do? I'm also now having to go 2 weeks without pay, 3 weeks without pay, and so on and so forth. And there was never really much out there that we're talking about the self-employed until they released the self-employment income support scheme that came out. It was roughly about 3-4 weeks after, wasn't it? It took a good bit of time anyway with it. So the self-employment income support scheme is available for self-employed workers, and they're able to apply for taxable grants in order to combat the loss of income. So if you think this is a grant, this isn't actually a loan, because there was the business loan that they could take out, the coronavirus business loan. However, instead of jumping straight onto the loan, they then came out with this grant, and it's a grant that you can take out through the government. It's given through the government, and it can be worth up to 80% of your profits, which is capped at £2,500 a month, and it is taxable, so it will be taxed. As it's a grant, again, it means that you actually don't need to pay anything back. Now, how the grants are calculated, so this can be in relation to any studio owners, it can be related to any personal trainers, sports massage therapists. The grants are calculated from your profits over the last 3 years. So you need to have a look at your last 3 years trading. What was your kind of growth profit revenue on average throughout those 3 years? Very, very similar as to when you go and apply for a mortgage for a house, if you think of it like that. So what happens if you don't have that many like years kind of booked self-employed? Well, unfortunately, it does mean that you need at least 1 year self-employment. I know it says it averages over the last 3 years, but you do need at least a year. So you must have your first tax filed for 2018, 2019 by literally tomorrow, the 23rd of April. So if you've been self-employed prior to the 6th of April 2019, you need to file your tax prior to this 23rd, tomorrow, Thursday, 23rd of April. A little bit late. Well, it's not late in us coming. It's just how we're delivering the news, and this only came out as an extension a couple of weeks ago. But they're actually giving people an extension to be able to file their tax return for it. So yeah, unfortunately for self-employed, they do need at least a year. To enable to be able to gain this scheme, and also for the self-employed, you need to earn more than 50% of your total income from self-employment. So if you do have a normal day-to-day job and you effectively just do some self-employed work outside of that, whether it be weekend work or whether it be work that you do in the evenings, it needs to be the majority income that individual draws down over those years. So however many years that you've got, 3 years, 2 years, 1 year, it needs to be the majority for those years. And also, you can see all of these different criteria points that are in there, because they're trying to help kind of like your average, what I would class as like your average person. That they've not put this out to try and help the super rich. Basically, they've put this out to help the majority. So your average trading profit must be less than 50 grand a year as well. Now that's profit, not turnover. So again, it all depends on what your accounts are looking like and what your margins are within those years. But your average trading profit must be less than £50,000 a year to be eligible for this grant. Effectively, if it's more than that, they're kind of deeming that you should have enough money to be able to cross this bridge. Exactly. So how do you do it? How do you get this self-employment income support scheme through the government? Well, you actually don't need to apply anywhere. The government, HMRC, will contact you if you are eligible for the scheme. So you'll be contacted, whether it be online or by a letter. And HMRC states that they're actually wanting to be able to contact everybody by mid-May for this. So if you haven't been contacted yet and you are kind of checking these criteria boxes, mid-May is the date as to when you would be contacted by, which again, unfortunately for some people, I mean, gyms have been closed since 23rd of March. That's a long time. March to May, if you haven't actually had any income coming in from self-employment. So it's pretty tough. It's pretty tough and rough at the moment. These schemes are expected to start paying out in June. So again, there's a bit of a gap there between March and June, and payments will be backdated then. So you'll get a lump sum payment for March, April, and May, which would help kind of cover any gaps, any credit cards, any loans, or anything that you've had to take out. So yeah, that's kind of a little bit about the self-employment support scheme that they've got. Now, the positive to that is that you can, if you are eligible, you tick those boxes. You can apply for both the scheme and universal credit at the same time, albeit we've probably heard regarding the criteria for universal credit as well. That unfortunately, if you've got a partner and they work and they earn over a certain amount, it's you may not be eligible for that as well. So, but you can, if you are eligible, to actually have both too. So that's always out there for the individuals. So yeah, that's kind of what is available there for the self-employed. And like I say, you do not need to contact HMRC. This is actually the worst time to contact HMRC because you can imagine the amount of people trying to get in contact with them. They will contact you if you're eligible. If you're not eligible though, unfortunately, you're looking at universal credits, and a potential for the coronavirus business loan if that's needed for individuals. So yeah, that's just a little bit about income support. I thought I'd put that in there just if it is going to be helpful for individuals. If you are paying corporation tax as well, Q2 corporation tax is going to be deferred until next year. So that's always a bit of a relief for individuals if they are paying corporation tax for their businesses. Have you got any questions on any of that, Matt? I mean, have you got?
No, mate, I looked into it for my business, like you said, about majority. So whatever the majority income is, would obviously that would what it would be based on. So it's not something that I would not fall into the category of the support for the self-employed. But luckily, I do know a couple of personal trainers who have actually been contacted by HMRC and are eligible for the grant. So people are aware it is a real thing and people are being contacted, which is a bit of peace of mind for people if you are, fit the criteria and you're not yet being contacted.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, and again, if you haven't been contacted yet, it just may be a matter that they haven't got round to you yet. You can imagine how many self-employed people are in the UK. However, if you haven't been contacted and it gets past that mid-May point, you can try and apply for a business interruption loan through the banks, but just be aware that is a loan, albeit it'll have a small percentage for current climate and environment, but it is still a loan that would need to be paid back at some point. But yeah, there are other things in place. I know Chancellor came out, mortgage holidays, for example, and stuff that there is support out there. It's just, rather than being pessimistic and thinking there's nothing out there for you, my best advice to people is actually look into it a little bit more. If you have a small business accountant that you work with, they're very helpful. I know my accountants that I work with have been very, very good with the communication that they're putting forward to the customers. If you've got any questions, straight away they're back to you. So if you do have a small business accountant or an accountant, my best piece of advice is contact them, because they are very on the ball at the minute with this stuff for the businesses as well. Cool. So I just thought we'd kind of cover that there, not to kind of put a downer on it, but just to kind of allow the guys to know what's out there in order to keep keep optimistic financially through this time period. Cool. So I think all I've got to do is just kind of shout out these podcasts that you've got up and coming, Matt, because I've listened to them prior to them being released. I know we talked about individuals taking time, step back, self-development, self-awareness, and using this time wisely. That Jamie Alderton podcast, and I know the other ones that you've recorded as well, they are really, really useful for people. So I mean, there's tons of content, tons of little nuggets in there that people can pull away and look to just kind of open the mind up a little bit in terms of the mindset and the business and the way in how they approach things too. So I would definitely recommend people to listen to those. So I know we've got a webinar up and coming towards the end of April. Matt, what's that? I know you're hosting it.
Yeah, so that's going to be on the 30th of April, which Thursday the 30th of April. So last week we decided to start creating these webinars, and the first one we did was online coaching 101. So online coaching as an overview, ways and means you can go about it. That's on our members portal for any learners who missed it and want to check that out. That's obviously on there as well. The next one is going to be still in the vein of online coaching, but still taps into how it can work for your face-to-face business. And that's more around creating social media, having a good social media presence, and sustaining it as well.
Yeah. So
that's going to be our next one. And then, like you mentioned earlier, we're going to periodically hold these webinars every so often on different topics that are relevant to all of our learners and newly qualified trainers.
Exactly, and I mean, if any of you guys are wanting webinars on specific things as well, just let us know. Either slide into kind of like our Instagram direct messages or Facebook message our page, because we also want to know what you guys want. So
Yeah,
we are doing our best from feedback that guys are telling us at the moment. But I mean, if you've got any specific things that you feel that you want to know more about, let us know, and we can look to deliver a webinar on that, definitely, or put a bit of content
absolutely.
together. So that's kind of wraps this episode of the Velocity Radio podcast up, guys. We just thought we'd give you, we'll kind of call this our coronavirus episode, eh? That's what this one will be. But be sure to subscribe to our podcast channels, whether it be on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube. And also, please ensure that you like our YouTube videos, and also look to leave a rating on our podcast channels for this podcast too. It really helps out the channel and helps get this in the ears of the right guys that it can be helpful to as well. Okay, so thanks, Matt, and we'll catch the guys on the next one, eh?
Yep. Stay safe, everyone, and we'll speak to you soon.
See you later.